Hello, beautiful people. How are all of you doing today? Hello! Sleep check? Eh. Eh. Wait, actually, I'm gonna grab some coffee. I'll be right back.
Osmanthus wine tastes the same as I remember. But where are those who share the memory? Every journey has its final day. Don't rush.
Alright. Oh. So, chat, how was your day? I took it off work, was fun. Oh, nice. Huh. What do I use for this since Arlecchino doesn't work?
I
What's
have
this?
high hopes for this journey.
Mm-hmm. Will you do the pre-release today? That is the plan, but I'm not entirely sure.
Silence!
Shower me with...
Stabilize! Bow your head.
Ew. Size of cringe. Alone in pre-release. Do we have actual leaks for her? for weapon and cons. Oh, but we don't have actual kit. Eh, whatever then. Nah, I fucked up.
It is time, Morax. We settle this now.
Teamwork is strength.
There is no
Let's
atonement
light it up.
for 1,000-year reign.
Let's light it up. Ow.
Gather. Today, you witness your reckoning.
Yeah, buddy.
Stabilize.
Wind strategy.
Everybody stand back.
Transfixed.
Let's light it up.
The enraged earth will not absolve you.
Order guide you.
You stand upon your tomb, though you know it not.
Stabilize.
Teamwork is strength.
Experience an eon of suffering.
Rise, bozo. At least we got a solvent, I guess. That's an ER max roll. That's pretty good. Where are you doing old weekly bosses? No real reason. It's just I don't really have anywhere I want to spend my resin, so I might as well get some billets. You know?
This opportunity is quite hard to come by. Well then, amuse me. Surrender is a valid option. I promise I'll be gentle.
Oh, I didn't let it cook enough.
Poor time. Passable effort.
Bro, can you stop parrying for a second, bozo?
Guess I should take you more seriously.
Solidify.
Let's light it up.
All you do is run.
Everybody stand back. Let's
Stabilize.
yeah, teamwork is strength.
I killed him with a salvo overload. That's funny. No billets. At least we got a chunk. Awful. Worthless. Garbage. Will you use your fragile for the 5.0 domains like you did in 4.0? Probably, yeah. That's the plan. That's the plan. I don't want to go to this one. This one's annoying. Why not go to like this? No. I guess they're all annoying. Yeah, whatever. Sounds like a bad plan. You should blow it all in a non-existent upgrade to your current artifacts. That's tempting, but I think I'll pass. Thank you.
Add Astra. Thank you for complete. Add Astra.
This is the best emote. I will judge that for myself. What the fuck? Nah. I don't like it.
Benny's adventure team, assemble!
It's so good. It's not. Your brain is just rotten, Vaita. I have 3 days left for this. I should do it. Can we do it? Is it long? No? Okay, that's good.
Off we go!
Have I ever been here? I feel like I haven't. I'd like to give it a go. Okay, so this is PvE, this is PvP. Let's do PvE. I can't be bothered with people. Oops. I thought it was gonna this was just gonna go back one, but I guess not. Change mode? Oh, I see. Knock 2 out of the scoring area, knock 3 out of the scoring area, knock 5. What's this? Oh, I see. Solitary will repel. Oh, I have to hold it, I see. That was bad. Well, it's fine, I guess. I knocked them all out. Do I need to have mine in this area? Like, does it change anything how many I have in this area? Not for the trial, I see. Or, okay, this is just scoring points, I see. This was too far. Fuck. Ooh, that was awful. Okay, well, fuck. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna... Oh, wait, you can move this! I forgot! Oh, no. Okay, never mind. This is gonna be easy. Never mind, it's not. I forgot you could move them. You can also cancel it by pressing Q. I see. That is also good to know, I guess. I see. That's so useful to know, though. Holy shit. That's crazy. Okay, this is just knocking them out. Alright, we can do that. Pew. Oh, I'm an idiot. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Aw, oh, whatever. Dude, you can't be serious. That's in? Nah. Nah. That's not in. There is no shot that's in. What the fuck, man? Nah. Whatever. It is what it is.
Where?
Whatever, man. Okay, this attracts. Okay, starting with this is good. No. No. Sure. What's this one again? This, okay, this is the attract one. This is a normal one. You know what? Just... Oh, that's fine. It is what it is. That's out of range, right? Yeah, that's fine. That's still enough points, right? Yeah. We're chilling. Okay. Ugh. What's this? This is attract, right? Wow. Chad, do you agree that I'm talented after this display of skill? I fucked that up. I'm not talented. I lied. Wait, this is out, right? I can't tell if it's out. Oh no. No! No! Whatever. I don't think this is out either. Dude, you're fucking with me right now. Okay, I already have all my stars. I just have to not fuck it up now. Okay. But I lied, I'm not talented. This is attract, right? Yeah. I'm horrible. What the fuck? This was awful. Wonder if this is gonna do anything. Oh! No. Okay. No! Wait, are these in? I don't think they're in. Fuck. This is gonna be fine, right? Good enough. Yeah, good enough. Good enough! Alright, we're done. Huge.
Memories of my home. This blade. It is
huge. +1 wish, chat.
Last link I have to the land of my birth.
May I get a single pog champ? Just one. How many new stages open? What kind of yapping is that? Alright. Let us... Let us get started on the Mualani weapon calc, and then we'll do the pre-release. Agreed? Agreed.
There are leaves around, and I know.
I'll
just
start
tune to
off
cover.
of a Nevilette calc, because it already has HP scaling stuff. But it doesn't have normal attack HP scaling, does it? Well, whatever. File, save as... Mualani. Okay. And then we just gotta make sure that this is 39.
The scenery is wonderful. Surely enough to convince anyone.
Elemental. Hard attack, effective HP. Elemental, normal attack. I also wanted to look at effective HP, not effective attack. In order to do that, I have to look at HP, not attack. Yep. Same for this. Okay. Then probably gonna need to remove this, this. Okay. Wrong. Okay. Set bonus is gonna be 15 all damage percent, right? Or is it 12? I think, did they change it? It's 12, right? It doesn't show here. But I'm pretty sure they did change it to 12. I don't think so. Oh, maybe not, actually. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe it is 15. I think you're right, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Now we're gonna have to do some cringe-ass stuff, but whatever. Let's start with... $15, 185, 570, 182, crit rate ascension, Catalyst, yep. Okay. I think we'll go off of a 3-skill rotation, and depending on, or a three chomp rotation, and depending on the team, either burst every rotation or every other rotation. I don't think it's worth it to force the ER requirements. We'll take a look at that though. What did I want to check? I forgot. What did I say I wanted to check? I said I wanted to check something, no? Fuck. Oh yeah, ER requirements. Okay. Caught. It's 4.5 particles average. For now, we can start with like a very straightforward team. Kazuha. Is Daya enough Pyro App? I'm not sure. I forgot. I need to double check something. I don't know. I think Daya should be enough by herself, right? I guess the problem might be the first one, actually. Like, I want a very default VV Vape team that doesn't require dank rotations as, like, the default ER requirements. And then I'll take a look at other teams. Like, I know the Shinyan rotation works, but it's also a little dank for some people, so I don't want to, like, force it. How many particles does he generate again? Oh. Four. Okay. Eh, whatever, man. Let's just look at Shinyan Zhongli. Can you use Yolanda and Farina with Mualani? Basically, can Chengling sustain double Hydro like that? You're gonna lose some vapes. I don't entirely agree with that, DJ. With Yelan, you're guaranteed that the vapes you lose are Yelan vapes, not not Mualani vapes. With Farina, you don't have that guarantee. So there's still she triggers Yelan Q. Well, she should. No? Am I an idiot? Oh, maybe she doesn't actually. I think I am an idiot. And no, am I an idiot? No, it does work, right? Let me check if we have any footage. Leakers. Mualani. Sort by new. Okay. We have any showcases with normal attack triggers. No, they're all removed. Fuck. Oh, thank you. I can't tell if it did anything. Because it just died to the first hit. That's not good footage. This is maybe better. Take a look. Okay, it doesn't look like Yolana's doing anything. It did trigger? I don't see it. At 33 seconds. I mean, I'm there, but I don't see it. Eh, whatever. Let's look at this for now. Okay. Kazuha is 3. Zhongli is like maybe 3 total. Thank you some Toma footage. Thank you. By the way, do you know what's vaping in that footage? I can't really tell because the aura never appears on the enemy. It's Mualani vaping. We checked in logs. That makes sense because Toma's Q should go out at the start of the normal attack animation because that's what it does, and it goes out instantly. Can you check? Actually, is there any actual footage of Mualani Toma? Because it should work, but I'm not sure if it's going to end up lining up well. Like, if you're getting 3 chomps, they should be more than 2.5 seconds apart. So Toma should behave as if he doesn't have ICD. But it's very possible that, like, in some situations you get the chomp too fast, and because of that you don't get your vape. Is Toma better than all these Gigacope options like Daya and Shinya? I mean, he should be easier to play, but I don't know if I'd say he's better. It's a good question. Alright, thank you, ABC. Anyways, let's say you're getting like two. And Zhongli on 5. Energy. Cost, it's 60, right? Unless they change that. 60. So ER requirements, if you want to burst every rotation in a team like this, would be way too high. $200 ER is not worth building for this. Her ult is good, especially with the changes, but it's not good enough to justify this. Yeah, like, it's good, but it's not ER sans good. Especially because her ult duration isn't that short. Like, her animation. Her ult animation isn't that short, and it means you lose VV uptime on your chomps. Like, you're always, if you're using your ult, you're always either losing one chomp of VV or not getting VV on your ult, right? One of the two. Okay. Then we can look at something that generates more particles. Let's start with a burning team. You're doing a burning team, you're not gonna do VV. You can do like Nahida. I don't know if you want to do Shangling. I think you only do Shangling if you're also playing a second Hydro. Otherwise, you're probably better off with one of the defensive options. Yeah, we can look at Daya. But then what? Candace? You know, that's probably not even that bad. Because your ER requirements get probably low enough to justify ult every rotation. Day is better because she's not an energy black hole. The thing is, being an energy black hole doesn't matter if the character isn't there to do damage, which Shangling wouldn't be in a team like this. Right, Shangling's particle generation is not actually much worse than Daya's, right? Especially because you're not proccing Daya's stuff off cooldown. I guess it's not here. Where's Daya? course, her particle generation isn't here. Frick you. What's her particle gen again? Still, the fact that Data has some defense allows you to run immediately alongside Data. I mean, again, right? Like I said, I think that Changling is only better if you're also running a second Hydro. Because there's no real upside to Changling if you're not also running a second Hydro. Like, the main upside to Changling is that you get a lot more Pyro, so you can vape more reliably if you have 2 Hydros. I agree with you that you're probably better off running a defensive option if you're running double Dendro. Like, that's completely fair. You know, I actually don't know. Does Burning give you 80 or 100 EM from Dendro Resonance? It's only 80. Damn, that's crazy. Because you're probably not getting any versions in this team, so you're missing out on 20 EM. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. Maj. I think your Yelan team with Shangling and Zhongli could still be just a tiny bit better than double Dendro, at least on KQM standard, though insanely close. I don't know about that.
This scenery is wonderful. Surely enough to convince anyone to become a wanderer.
Mualani is 90 to 100k at C0 plus Sack Jade. What are the assumptions for that? I just saw the J-Star and stuff. At it. I'll take a look at his written guide, because I can't be bothered watching the video. Wait, what? Delayed by ping? Is that true? Shit, if that's true, she's awful. Jesus Christ. I hope that's not. I'm gonna hope that's just something he made up. Because if that's true, she's actually terrible on high ping. The calcs I've seen with Kazuha, Shangling, Zhongli, still around 60k DPS with 2.1 mil DPR. What the fuck is that rotation? Wait, how many? Am I just... Is that a 35-second rotation? Am I an idiot? Jesus Christ. I mean, I guess. That doesn't sound very pleasant. But yeah, like, that's very reasonable to me. Like, around 60k DPS in a team like that is what I'm expecting. Maybe a little bit more on an optimized rotation with all of the nerfs. Like, 90 to 100k, that was fucking V1 territory. Why are these all Hytham constellation icons? Whatever, man. Hmm. Trailing in every team, true. Okay. I think this is a nice assortment of teams, I guess. But Shinyan isn't there. SMH. Honestly, I'm kind of dead when it comes to VV Vape teams. Because her nerfs fucked her VV Vape team so much. It feels so fucking stupid to be playing VV just to only have VV for one chomp. Which is what's gonna happen if you're opening with your ult. You're gonna have it for your ult, you're gonna have it for the first chomp, and it's gonna run out by the second one. And I don't know, it just feels wrong. How was any team bricked by Shangling? I think it's because of the cooldown. Isn't it 2 hits? It'll be 2 hits in total, pretty much. Right, so either 2 chomps or 1 ult, 1 chomp. I could see a world where very specific Bennett setups give you 3 chomps. The main issue is, well, I don't know. Maybe if you don't use your Toma E, you could do it with Toma. Maybe Shinyan and AoE? I don't know, man. Because the main issue is, like, you can't get your Hydro Swirl and then immediately go to Mualani. Because Mualani's lack of off-field Hydro means that you get your thing. You get your dude, I can't words. Mualani's lack of off-field Hydro means that you have to swirl off of a normal attack from her. But her normal attack is just 1U with log ICD. Or maybe you can use a charge attack, but like, ugh. Which means that you have to use her normal attack, and then without applying too much pyro, get all of your rotation stuff ready and get your swirl. And the reality is that for a lot of teams, it just doesn't line up well, right? And like it inherently means that you have to start with Toma. Like you have to do Toma stuff before you swap into her. Because if you EQ on Toma, you lose the Hydro, right? Which means that you're going to start with a Pyro Aura, which means that you're going to have to normal attack and charge attack on Mualani, which increases rotation time. But then also, okay, you have Hydro on the enemy now. Swap the Kazuha, use your E. Oh no, it's Hydro. It's just, like you get the Hydro Swirl, but you also get Hydro Aura, which prevents you from vaping. So it's like, yeah, like you're gonna have to like move out of the way to make sure your Q doesn't hit or some shit like that. It's, the rotations are gonna be dank if you want to be able to swap directly from Kazuha Hydro Swirl to Mualani. Right? Pretty much the only character that can do it without too much of a problem. The only characters, because there's 2, that can do it without too much of a problem are Shinyan and Bennett. Because of their self-pyro app. But they don't have off-field pyro. Shinyan technically can have off-field pyro, but it's not reliable enough. So you'll only be able to vape 1 hit, which loses you more damage than only getting VV on 2 of your hits, right? Kazuha E into plunge cancel into N1Q. Yeah, but the whole point of being able to Kazuha E into directly Mualani is to increase your VV uptime. If you have to fall cancel into N1 into Q1 Kazuha, that's more time than it would have taken to just swap to your pyro unit and then to Mualani. Right? So like, you're not solving the problem. You're just getting the problem in a different way. It is something you can do for sure. Like in this team, you use Kazuha's burst as your pyro. Anyways, it has been an hour, so I will be right back. Don't forget to remind me, chat. Hmm. Hmm. I guess we just look at immunity for now. Okay, so this team is gonna be cringe, isn't it? I think you actually have enough downtime to use Nahida Burst every rotation. Maybe you also use Emily's Burst every rotation. So you spend half of your rotation in animations. Okay, cool. Sounds good. The new support set can only be used by Nutland people. Not entirely. You only get full value out of it on characters from Nutland, but you still get 12% damage on other characters. Okay, are you getting 3 sets of Nahida particles? Probably not. Nahida EQ, Emily E, Daya E, Mualani Q, Daya E. Why would you swap back to Daya to E? What's the point of that? Reapply Pyro when you get it from the E. Like when you use Mualani's burst, it is an instance of dealing damage to an enemy, which is the condition to proc Daya's thing. So he's gonna apply Pyro. Well, it itself might not apply Pyro because it might be on cooldown, but you'll reapply Pyro by the time you do your E. But the rotation is would probably just be Nahida EQ, Amity E, Daya E, Mualani. And then for the next rotation, you just do Amity Q instead of E. Or if your rotation was too slow, you can EQ, but yeah. Let's say 5 particles from Amity. The actual amount is going to depend a lot. Maybe 6, actually. And then Daya, another, like, 4. Are you catching everything on her? No, you're not. Nahida on 5. Would you want Nahida on 5? With 0 5s on the team, your ER requirements are burst every other rotation. That's kind of shit, isn't it? With 2 5s on the team, it's still kind of high. Maybe this is fine, honestly. $160 is still too high, yeah. Like, if it got down to, like, 140, I'd say it's worth it to go 5s. But it's not, so it's probably still too much. Is chat ding-donking you about the squats every hour? They're not, but I'm still remembering, so we're fine. I also want to look at the ER requirements of a double Hydro team, so let's look at... Baiju, Shangling, Farina. Let's say she catches 5 and doesn't catch 2. No, catches 4, doesn't catch 3. Baiju is how many again? I4 War as well. It's not here. Is it? $3.5? 3.5 makes sense. But he's catching it. And then Shangling, you're probably getting 2 Gobas. 2 Goba hits. Are you? Yeah, probably. So you're probably getting 3. And then Shengling on 5. Baiju on 5. Freedom could also be on 5. It's not necessary though. Okay. So in a team like this, you can reliably burst every rotation. What other teams could we look at? I guess that this is fine for now. I got a decent idea for particle generation. Mona? Yeah, I guess we could look at Mona as well. I mean, the Mona thing is going to be the same as this, actually. So it doesn't need to be calced in terms of VR. And then for Candace, what sort of teams would I want to look at with her? Is it the famous E-less Mono rotations? Yeah, it is. Which is, yeah, not ideal, I know. How much ER does Mona need? Yeah. I think with Candace, you'd kind of rather play a team that's like Cornge. Or maybe not. Maybe Candace can help you with the setups. Eh. Well, I can't be bothered. This is like very default. How many particles is she again? Oh wow, this is awful. It's 2 particles? Jesus Christ. That sucks. Oh, that is really bad. Okay, you get 3 favs in this team though, so the ER requirements are not like that rough, but they're still not good. Alright. Alright, that's good to know. Let's get back to weapon calcs. Alright, so the damage on vape. We're gonna start with a VV team, I guess. So it's 14.76 plus 7.38 times 3 plus 36.89. You have 3. That's without any external buffs. 20k DPS. I'll have to adjust crit stuff though. 18,970. Still stays the same. Okay. So we are capped on crit. Alright. And then burst, elemental Q, reacted elemental Q. Do I have that properly? I might not. I do. Okay. $99.3. Okay, and it's like 0.5 times per rotation. Should go EM Sands or HP Sands? It's gonna depend on the team, but generally EM Sands is pretty good. It also depends a lot on your weapon. About half of your damage is gonna be... So we can do average of like... minus 5%. No, sorry, minus 10%. Element. In that team, you need ER on Kazuha, so you're gonna get like 32, not 40 something. Okay. Zhongli gives you another about minus 20 average. Shinyan is not burst reliant, and you can trigger instructor on her reliably. So you probably do go instructor. Hey, does instructor give you 100 or 120? I forgot. How did I forget that? I don't know, but I forgot. It's 120, okay. Only Shinyan shield warrant 50 HP, we could drop Zhongli. The thing is, what do you put in if you drop Zhongli? Like, Mualani doesn't have a lot of characters she synergizes with well. Zhongli's just there because he has a long duration buff, and it's not even really because of the shield. Or long duration debuff, I guess. Kachina can fuck your setups. Child has no upside outside of Hydro Resonance. Anyways, I don't think you'd run Petra. I think you'd just give up on it. Okay, and then let's be more reasonable for this, like 615. 5 times 3.3%. Okay. And then we'll actually have to go weapon by weapon and fix stuff. Okay. Okay. We also have to add a bunch of weapons, but let's start with just the stuff we have to change. The Lost Prayers. This is fine uptime, I think. Memory of Dust doesn't matter. Skyward Atlas doesn't matter. Solar Pearl, I guess, does matter. Where are you, Solar Pearl? Average like 5% uptime. Or 5% damage percent. Okay. Frostbearer, no. Eye of Perception, no. Widsith, average R1. That's fine. Yeah, that's completely fine. Wine and Song, no. Sag Fragment. Refinement doesn't matter on it. It's just an EM stat stick. We do want to have it in though. Because an EM stat stick is actually kind of good. Even if it's not a good EM stat stick. Okay, this is fine. This is without looking at ER requirement changes. Honestly, I don't know. In this team, Proto Amber's ER requirement help doesn't actually do anything. This is Mualani, Shinyan, Kazuha, Zhongli. The ER refund from Proto Amber doesn't matter because you're not bursting every rotation anyways. Mappa Mare, probably important. I'll find it eventually. There it is. Yeah, this is not going to be good average. Because her damage is on the reactions she triggers, so she doesn't get the damage before she does her damage. It's going to be like less than 1 stack average, like 6% maybe. Favj. With Favj, you can reliably burst every rotation. The only weapon that lets you do so. So we will double burst damage times 2. Still shouldn't be that good, but it's a lot more reasonable because of it. It's actually a fine stat stick. Blackcliff again. I mean, we might as well. Is it already here? Yeah, it is. Not bad. TTDS, might as well. Kagura's. I gotta check uptime. Using elemental skill, but it gives elemental skill damage, so it's worthless. It's 0. But it's still a crit stat stick, so it's not that bad, but it's not good. Yeah. 1,000 floating dreams. Should be pretty decent, actually. It's 30% damage bonus. Yeah, okay, it's already there. Yep. Isn't it skill damage bonus? No. Increase the equipping character's damage bonus from their elemental type. No, it's not. Bell is awful. I'm not even including it. I don't care. Cash flow supervision uptime. Awful. Cash flow supervision. Well, wait, actually, fruit of fulfillment first. This is ass. I'm not including it. Wandering Even Star. I mean, I might as well include it as a stat stick, but it doesn't really matter too much. Hakushin Ring. Gonna be awful. Doesn't need to be included. Magic Guide. I don't think. Yeah, no. Okay. I wasn't sure for a second, but yeah, no, it's not good. Ballad of the Boundless Blues. Is awful. I'm not even going to include it. Sacrificial Jade. Okay, so I actually have to adjust Sacrificial Jade uptime. Because you're probably not getting full uptime on this. Probably getting, like, about 25%. Same for the EM. Wait, which is not there for some reason. Okay. Like 30. Yeah. Okay. How much do you overcap? You start with over 100. But right now, I'm overcapping by 10% from substats, and it's still the best option available. I haven't looked at the new craftables, though. Rites of Eternal Flow. In this team, not going to be very good, right? Because it's reliant on... It is charge attack damage increase anyways, so who cares? It's still a decent stat stick, but... Yeah. Okay. Then we look at the craftables. Or the craftable and the event weapon. Which one is craftable? Is it the ring or the horn? Any knowers? I think it's the ring, right? Ring? Okay. Ring of... Yeah, I don't know how to say this. R1. Base attack, 510. HP percent, 41.3. Damage percent. We got elemental normal attack. Yeah. Minimum of 16%. 0.6% of total HP divided by 1,000. So we cap it out right now. How much do you need to cap it out? $26k HP, so you craft it out very easily. Okay. Oh, it doesn't scale linearly. I see. That's kind of annoying. R5 is going to be the exact same thing, except these numbers change to 32 and 1. But we're still capped out with these assumptions. Oh, this is a problem. We don't actually get this crit rate. I don't know why it was there. Okay. Okay, that's pretty decent. Ash Graven Drinking Horn. Probably not very good. This is the event weapon, so we only need R5. Ash Graven Drinking Horn R5. That's probably fine, honestly. Oh, I don't want to calc this shit. Oh, no. 80% divided by 20. It's reasonable, but it's not good. And finally, Surf's Up R1. So, base attack 542, HP percent 20. We just get 4 stacks average, so 48%, and then 88.2. Yeah. Okay, and then it's going to be percentage of Ring of Yaksha R5. Okay, and we sort. I'll double check with someone else's calcs, but the conclusion from this is outside of the craftable, unless you're going for signature, high refined sack jade, 1,000 floating dreams, or rites of eternal flow, there's no weapon you want to use. Yeah, I guess I could calc donut as well. This is probably not worth calcing. I mean, this is probably not worth calcing either, actually. Yeah, no, this is definitely bad. It's gonna be a lot worse than the craftable. Does that line up with what Jason had? Let me take a look. Yeah. I guess Widsith is worth mentioning. It is interesting that he didn't talk about... No, he does signature. But I guess... Okay, let me check something. Let's take a look at EM Sands. Okay. So for all of these, EM Sands are worse. I guess it's because we have a lot of... We don't even have that much external EM. I guess just a little bit is enough. Yeah, I guess we're not getting a lot of HP either. Yeah. Okay. Seems alright. Seems alright. Let's take a look at another team with different buff external buff assumptions. See if anything is different. We'll take a look at Nahida, Emily, Daya. With that team, you're not getting any resistance shred, but instead, you are getting... You're also not getting any of this, but you are getting this. 120, then 250 from Nahida. That's kind of it, actually, for external buffs. So with enough EM external buffs, Thousand Floating Dreams isn't really that good anymore. Oh yeah, Dendro Res, I forgot. Thank you. Yeah. I think I'll mention Fav, but I won't recommend it. Alright. I feel pretty comfortable. Her sig's pretty good. Her signature is pretty average in terms of, like, increase compared to best free-to-play option. But that's mainly because her free-to-play option is actually better than average. So both her signature and her best free-to-play option are actually pretty good. Which makes it so that pretty much everything else is kind of ass in comparison, right? Like, that's why there's so few weapons that are better than the signature. Or, sorry, that are better than the craftable. It's because effectively the craftable is just very good. And the other alternatives are kind of ass. I think I will actually include Widsith with the right buff. So let's take a look at Widsith. Damage percent buff. That is the right one, right? Yeah. I just want to have it for reference. So, like, if you're resetting on a speed run, Widsith is always a weapon that's worth thinking about. So many new chatters, Pog. Welcome, chatters. Hello, Poyo Pog and WGF Yuri. Even with the EM buff, though, EM buff R5. EM buff is what, 480, I think? Even with the EM buff, it's at least better than the other 4 stars. But then with the attack buff, it's pretty fucking awful. And then with no buff, it's really bad as well. They got a fish for damage percent buff. I mean, I just don't think Widsith is that good of an option, but like for speedrunning, if you don't have her signature, then yeah, that's probably what I'd recommend. Okay, I think we might be ready for the pre-release, chat. But I don't want to interrupt it. So we're gonna round up and assume that we're 2 hours in. So I will be right back. Ugh. What the? Yeah. Ugh. Sorry about that, chat. Alright, sorry, chat. Oh. Thank you for the Prime, VMW. Are you still playing ZZZ? No. The burnout, like, hit real hard. And I haven't opened either ZZZ or Wuo or honestly any gacha other than Genshin in like 2-3 weeks. And honestly, I'm glad I did. Or didn't. Whatever, you know what I mean. Alright, chat, it's time. Say hi to YouTube.
Wherever in this world I roam, I carry memories of my home. This blade, it is the last link I have to the land of my birth.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. Hi to the Mualani pre-release analysis. It has been a long time coming, and boy, do we have a lot of things to say. Mualani is one of the characters that has gotten the most beta changes that weren't really changes to her mechanics, but definitely changes to her balance, and we're going to be talking about all of that. But as usual, we're going to start with a quick little overview of what she does. So, base HP, 15,185. This is on the higher side when it comes to character HP. We go take a look at her. I think it's this page. Take a look at character HP. There's not too many characters that have more than she does. Right, 15,185 is right about one more HP than Nilo. Taking her place as the 4th highest base HP. Obviously, though, she doesn't have HP Ascension, so she doesn't actually have as much HP as Nilo, but whatever, you get the point. However, her base defense of 570 is a lot lower. It's definitely on the lower side. When you look at high HP characters that are, going to spend time on field, it's definitely not the same level as Hu Tao. It's a lot less, a lot closer to Neuvillette. Which isn't to say that she's squishy at all, because, I mean, if you've ever played Neuvillette, you'll know that it's kind of hard to die on him. But obviously she doesn't have the same sort of self-healing that Neuvillette does, so her relatively low defense will still sometimes have an impact. It's not always going to be an issue, but it is something to keep in mind. Or rather than something to keep in mind, it's something to it's useful to know about it. It's useful to know that even though she's going to have high HP, she can still get hit pretty hard. Base attack, 182, and we're going to see this doesn't matter at all because, well, none of her kit scales with attack. Well, none of the useful parts of her kit scale with attack. She is an HP scaler. And her Ascension stat is crit rate. And honestly, her Ascension stat being crit rate is bad. It's not bad to have good stats, and crit rate is a good stat, but crit rate is one of the very few stats, if not the only stat in the game, that actually has a hard cap. If you go higher than 100% crit rate becomes completely useless, right? Any crit rate above 100% is completely wasted and doesn't increase your damage whatsoever. Genshin is not a game that has a mechanic that converts excess crit rate to crit damage or anything like that. And as we're going to see when we talk about the artifacts, but that is worth mentioning now, one of the new artifact sets coming in Natlan is going to be her best in slot artifact set, and it gives you 40% crit rate. Which means that Mualani's base crit rate of 24.2 plus the 40% from that gets you to 64.2 to begin with. He's a catalyst, and an HP scaling catalyst. So if we look at the sort of weapons that you'd have available on an HP scaling catalyst, well, obviously, we already have a character to compare her to in Neuvillette, and Neuvillette loves Sacrificial Jade. Sacrificial Jade gives you 36.8%, which, with the 64.2 base she would have with her base crit rate and her kit, brings her to 101% crit rate. That's before any main or substats from artifacts. which effectively means that it makes crit rate a dead stat in your artifacts, which makes it a lot harder to have high quality artifacts. We're going to talk about the implications of all of that when we talk about weapons and artifacts later on, but it is something that's worth mentioning when it comes to her Ascension stat. Crit rate is definitely not the best she could have had. She would have much rather getting either crit damage or damage percent, which are stats that she's not going to overcap. Hell, honestly, HP percent wouldn't be better, but it would be more comfortable to build around. Next, let's get into her kit. We don't really need to read her normal attacks because they're bad. The main purpose of her normal attacks is, as we're going to see when we talk about the rest of the abilities, she doesn't have a way to apply Hydro outside of actually doing her damage. So very similar to a character like Hu Tao, where you can't use her own Pyro as a way to set up your VV. But unlike Hu Tao, she's a Catalyst user, which means that she can actually use her Hydro because of her normal attacks, right? Her normal attacks dealing Hydro damage is going to be useful in order to set up VV or any other like setup reactions you need with Hydro. But the normal attacks themselves are pretty bad. Next up, the bread and butter of her kit, Surf Shark Wavebreaker. Combining her mastery of Pyro and Pole Arms, Mualani summons a Pyronado that... Okay, no. Combining her mastery of speed and the waves of water, Mualani can surf anytime, anywhere. After using the skill, Mualani will gain 60 Night Soul points and enter the Night Soul's Blessing state. This is the first pre-release I'm doing on a Nutland character, so we're going to have to do a little bit of clarification in terms of what Night Soul is. Night Soul is the it's the Nutland exclusive mechanic, like Uzia and Numa was in Fontaine. And honestly, it kind of doesn't matter. Night Soul, being in the Night Soul's Blessing state, what that means is you are currently doing something that has Night Soul, and in and of itself it doesn't do anything, but it is a condition when it comes to certain buffs, right? So, or it can be a condition when it comes to things. So like, while the equipping character is in Night Soul's Blessing and on the field, their damage dealt is increased by 15%. And that's an example. This Night Soul's Blessing itself doesn't do anything, but some external effects, like the new artifact set that's coming, only are conditional on being in the Night Soul Blessing state. Right? But the Night Soul Blessing state itself doesn't actually have an effect. Night Soul points, on the other hand, do something, but what they do is dependent on the character. Again, they don't do anything in and of themselves. But they have an effect that is dictated by what the character does. So in Mualani's case, as you can continue reading, Night Soul's Blessing, Mualani, so when she is in her Night Soul Blessing state, when she's surfing, basically, continuously consume Night Soul points. When they're depleted, or you can cancel it early, Mualani's Night Soul Blessing will end. So, you can think of it a lot like Wanderer's like second stamina bar that appears when you use his E. It effectively works the exact same way. It's just a visual indicator of a duration counter for her. It gets depleted over time, and as we're going to see a little bit later on, you have a way to refill it. So, for Mualani, when she's in the Night Soul's Blessing state, she mounts her Sharky surfboard, so she starts surfing. You can move on water, and I think this is just what they call the lava in Natlan. Liquid flogis thingy. And she will take no damage from the lava. Normal attacks will be converted to Sharky's Bites, dealing Night Soul aligned hydro damage. So Night Soul aligned, again, doesn't really mean anything. But when you deal Night Soul aligned damage, it will trigger Night Soul Burst, which also doesn't do anything, but is another trigger condition for things. In Mualani's case, that's related to her Ascension 4 passive. Whenever a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul Burst, she will gain 1 stack of Wave Chaser's exploits, whatever. Up to 3 stacks, which increases her burst damage based on how many stacks. Effectively, Night Soul aligned damage has an effect, or can have an effect on the character's kit. On the Natlan character's kits. But again, by itself, it doesn't do anything. It's very similar to, it's a lot more similar to Arca and like Pneuma and Uzia stuff. But when it comes to Pneuma and Uzia, it's the enemies that have effects based on Pneuma and Uzia that you apply. When it comes to Night Soul, it's the other way around. It's your characters that do things based on that. However, there are also upcoming enemies that have effects when you hit them with Night Soul aligned damage. So it's actually kind of both. It feels, I don't know if I have a good way to explain it because it feels incredibly intangible. Like it's just, it itself doesn't do shit. So it's hard to like convey it properly. But you can kind of just forget about it and it's not really important. Anyways, damage dealt this way is considered normal attack damage. When she makes contact with opponents in this state, Mualani applies Marked as Prey to them and gains 1 wave momentum stacks up to 3 stack. 1 wave momentum stack up to 3 stacks. 1 stack can be gained from the same opponent every 0.7 seconds. So, while she's surfing, when she goes through enemies, she gains stacks. Up to 3. When Mualani uses Sharky's Bite, so when she does her normal attack while surfing, her damage dealt increases based on wave momentum stacks. When she has 3 stacks, you will use Sharky's Surging Bite instead of Sharky's Bite, dealing even more damage and removing all stacks. If you use your Sharky's Surging Bite, or wait no, when you use a Sharky's Bite on an enemy that has the mark from colliding with them, it will effectively fire the damage from her Sharky's Bite to all of the enemies that are marked, which is going to help her a lot in AoE situations. It effectively means that if you're against a lot of enemies, you can go through all of them and then use your enhanced normal attack. And even if you hit only one of them, it's going to deal damage to all of them. However, when there's multiple enemies hit by it, the damage dealt is going to be decreased. It's a lot of words. I feel like it's an overly complicated description. To try to simplify it, you use your E, start surfing, go through enemies. When you've gone through either a lot of enemies, when you've gone through either 3 different enemies or the same enemy 3 times, or a mix of those 2, you fire a Pog normal attack that does a lot of damage. And I do mean a lot of damage. Let's take a look at the numbers, right? The base damage of Sharky's Bite is 14.76% of max HP. The amount of damage that you gain per stack is 7.38% of max HP. And the additional damage when you're on max stack is another 36.89% HP. Which means... Thank you. That it's about 74% of her max HP. Which is almost as much as Nilo's full burst. And you can get multiple of them. Now, this is where we start talking about the nerfs. Because this is in her latest state. And she is a character that has gotten nerfed very heavily over beta versions. Her first version was honestly kind of broken. And that's me saying that. I generally don't use the word broken to describe especially like carries and 5-star characters. And she's a 5-star carry, and I definitely do think that she was arguably broken. Need broken Mualani? Ah, nah, I'm good. And she got pretty massive hits to her damage. Before we can completely cover the nerfs, we have to very quickly talk about her Ascension 1 passive, because that's the last part of her kit that's really important. When Sharky's Surging Bite hits an opponent, a puffer will be generated nearby. Mualani will restore 20 Night Soul points when she picks up a puffer. Puffers, from what I've seen, seem pretty brain dead to pick up. You don't have to, like, actually focus too hard like you would when it comes to, like, picking up Shanling's Pepper or the leaf from the Sumeru craftables. It seems pretty brain dead to pick up. Only 2 such buffers can be created this way during her skill. And effectively, it just restores 20 Night Soul points, which means that the total Night Soul points that she's going to get is 60 plus 20 twice, right? So plus 40 for a total of 100. In her first beta iteration, she could only get 1 puffer, and it was either 28 or 24. I'm not entirely sure. So she had a much lower duration when it came to the surf duration. But it was 35. That was V2. No, V3. That was V3. It started at 25, then it was 22. And then it was... Was it V3 or V4? Yeah, then it was 35. Anyways, in her first version, her skill duration was lower because she only had about. And by the way, the Night Soul point consumption is about 10 per second. So the base 60 points is about 6 seconds. Oops, that's not Mualani. The base 60 points is about 6 seconds. In her first beta iteration, it was about 8.5 if you picked up the buffer. However, her damage was also significantly higher. With her total, this is level 10. I want to look at level 9. Fuck, I can't. Okay. Let's take a look at that then. $39.06. 15.62. 7.81. Okay. And this one, 52.1. 39.1. 13 times 3. But yeah. So in terms of the damage that you get from one bite, it's about 60% in her latest beta iteration of what it was in her first beta iteration, right? Which is a 40% damage nerf, which is a massive, massive difference. In exchange for that, you do get, well, we're gonna see later, slightly higher burst scaling, but more importantly, longer skill duration. In her first beta iteration, with the footage I've seen, it seems like in the average single target scenario, you could reliably get 2 bites, but 3 depended a lot on the enemy. Some enemies' hitbox is a little weird and wonky, and you get stacks, and you want to get 3 stacks before you use your normal attack, obviously, because you get a massive amount of damage from actually making sure you get to the 3rd stack. Right, it's about half of her damage almost. But yeah, against enemies with weird hitboxes, because she gains stacks on hitbox collision, it can be a little weird. So against enemies like Primo Geovishop, for example, it's a little wonky. Bosses in general are going to tend to be harder than just base enemies. When she's in AoE, she gains stacks a lot faster because her cooldown is per enemy, not total. Anyways, point being, in her first version, you could reliably get 2. In a decent amount of situations, get 2 plus the an additional one that wasn't fully stacked. And in very rare situations, actually get 3. Now, you can relatively reliably get 3. In a decent amount of situations, get 3 plus a non-fully stacked one. And in some rare situations, get 4. That's not, by itself, anywhere near enough to make up for the damage nerfs. So she is definitely not nearly as broken as she was in her first version. But these are relatively strong mitigating factors. She is not 40% worse than she used to be. One of the issues with those mitigating factors, though, is that, yeah, you're getting more hits, but the hits are coming out as quickly, right? Just because you're getting more hits doesn't mean... Like, getting 3 hits instead of 2 doesn't mean you're getting 50% more damage. because a lot of buffs don't last for the full duration. On top of that, in her first iteration, most of her damage, almost half of her damage, was on the base Sharky's Bite, which meant that the last hit, if she wasn't able to get to fully stack it, still dealt a pretty good chunk of damage. Whereas now, that last hit does a lot less. Because most of the damage is backloaded into the enhanced attack. Finally, we have her ult. Fires a Super Shark missile that can track opponents, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE hydro damage based on Mualani's max HP. It's about 100 motion value, and her Ascension 4 passive makes that increase to very, very reliably about like 115 motion value because of the first one. The cooldown on proccing the Night Soul Burst, that is the condition for the damage increase from Ascension 4, is going to depend on how many Natlan characters you have in your party, right? So that's another Night Soul mechanic. If you have one character, it's 18 seconds, or 15, I think it's 18. 2 characters, it's 12, and 3 characters, it's 9. So, new Natlan character. We don't have a lot of Natlan character options, so you're most likely only going to have one Natlan character on your team. So it's going to be once per rotation that you proc this, so 15. But eventually could be 30 or even 45. One thing that's worth mentioning is that her ER requirements, or her energy cost is 60, but as we're going to see, a lot of her teams struggle in terms of particle generation. So her energy cost not being that high doesn't actually mean that her ER requirements are low. In a lot of teams, her ER requirements to burst every rotation are actually high enough that you don't want to burst every rotation. The amount of ER that you'd have to build in order to get your burst reliably every rotation is so high that it is less damage than to just get your burst every other rotation without building ER. And if you do get your burst every other rotation, that means you're going to get probably 2 stacks of Night Soul Burst instead of 1. It's going to hit a little bit harder. So, now that we have a basic understanding of her kit, what makes it work? How do you work around a character that wants to surf around the battlefield for a little bit and then do a big nuke and then repeat that a few times? This is a rhetorical. Well, okay. The best way to take advantage of a kit like this is obviously going to be in a forward Vape team. Her whole kit is built around very slow attacks that deal a lot of damage. She doesn't have... I don't think she has. Let me double check. It doesn't matter if she does, but I don't want to say something that's just wrong. Yeah. She doesn't have ICD on her Sharky's Bite. Which means she can react on every hit. Yeah, she doesn't have ICD on her Sharky's Bite, so she can react on every hit. She applies it slowly enough that it's very easy to apply the pyro you need. And she doesn't really do anything other than that damage. So because of that, she is very clearly a character that is designed around forward vaping. Do you have to play her in forward vape? No. She's still playable in other teams. You can still use her in like a mono hydro team or something like that. But you're obviously not taking advantage of her kit nearly as much. As we're gonna see, her team options are kind of lacking right now. It's something I've talked about a decent amount in the past, but I haven't talked about too much recently. But when it comes to forward vape teams, the reason why we haven't had many that are popular isn't just the lack of forward vape hydro units. It's also the fact that there aren't really non-hydro units that you'd want to put in those teams that would be very good. And that's definitely something that we're going to see with her, is the lack of currently available units that synergize well with her. This is something that is very likely going to be remedied by the Pyro Archon. I very much expect the Pyro Archon to synergize with Mualani and give her a much stronger option. What are you guys saying, leaker? Do we actually have leaks on her? Only sus ones? Okay. But yeah, and again, we don't have any actual reliable leaks on the Pyro Archon yet, so it might not be the Pyro Archon themselves, it might be another character that comes in that one. But I very much do expect some support for Mualani teams later on. Because as we're going to talk about when we talk about the teams, she has teams that are good, but a lot of them are going to be pretty clunky or going to have a very obvious flaw that would be fixed. That could easily be fixed if a character was trying to fix it. But because of that current somewhat lack of synergistic units, it makes it so that non-vape teams are still not that far behind the vape teams, and they're still completely viable. If you don't want to bother playing a vape team, you just want to slot her into your mono hydro team, you'll be completely fine doing so. It's not gonna suck. You don't have to worry about that. But that doesn't mean that's what you want to do. So let's talk a little bit more about those vape teams. Actually, no. Before we talk more about the vape teams, we're going to do the usual pre-release stuff where we cover the weapons, artifact, sets, artifact, stats, and teams. So, for the first time in a pretty long time, honestly, the weapon section is going to be short. There are not many things to say about Mualani weapons, because honestly, it's very, very straightforward. A lot of weapons in this game are, or a lot more weapons in this game are tailored towards attack scaling characters than characters that scale off of a different stat. Which makes it so that when a non-standard, like a defense or HP or EM, I guess, scaling character has a very, very synergistic free-to-play option, a lot of other alternatives that you'd usually consider decent stat stakes, even the 5-star options, are kind of just not that good. In Mualani's case, there are very, very few weapons that are worth talking about because of the existence of the upcoming Fontaine craftable, the Ring of Yaksha. It's an HP. HP substat weapon, medium base attack. Using an elemental skill grants you an effect that gives you normal attack damage bonus based on your max HP. At R5, for every 1,000 max HP, you increase your normal attack damage by 1%. And on an HP scaling character where you're likely to build an HP Sans as well, that already has over 15k base HP, capping this is very, very easy. So it effectively gives you 32 damage %. And the reality is that a stat stick like this is enough to make most 5-star stat stakes just worse. One of the reasons for that is because of her potential crit overcap, which makes a lot of the crit weapons a lot worse than they otherwise would be. But honestly, even if it wasn't for that, yeah, it's just a pretty good stat stick. And HP scaling characters, unlike attack scaling characters, don't tend to have the best options when it comes to external HP buffs, right? There's no HP Bennett. And because Mualani is a character that is focused around vape, there are a lot less of her teams that are going to want to run double Hydro and get that 25% HP from the Hydro Resonance. And all of these things together make it so that the 41% HP you get from this is actually pretty competitive with crit substats. This being HP substat instead of crit is often not much worse, if not just straight up outright better. So, what are the weapons that are worth talking about outside of the Ring of Yaksha? We have her signature, obviously, Surf's Up. We have Widsith, which is always worth talking about, even if it's not always worth recommending. We have Sacrificial Jade. We have Nevilet's signature, the Tome of Eternal Flow. We have Nahida's signature, 1,000 Floating Dreams. And that's it, right? Oh, fuck, they changed. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay. And that's it. That's it. There are not that many weapons to talk about, which I like. They've been adding weapon after weapon, obviously, because the game is starting to get a little bit older. Which has made the weapon section of the pre-releases get a lot more dense in information, because you have to talk about all of the weapons that are available. Which sucks. It sucks. I'm tired of having to talk about 83 different weapons. I like the fact that I don't have to talk about as many for once. The event weapon for people that don't have billets? No, because R1 of the craftable is still better than R5 of the event weapon. And if you have no billets whatsoever, maybe, but like, get yourself some billets, man. I guess we can also quickly talk about Fav and Prototype Amber. So, Surf's up, best in slot. Ring of Yaksha, best free to play. One thing I want to talk about when it comes to Surf's Up is that if you just only look at the stats that it gives you, it looks like it's incredibly strong because it gives you a lot of different stuff. I want you to keep in mind that we have a very strong free-to-play option. When it comes to the increase from Ring of Yaksha to Surf's Up, it's actually pretty similar to the, if not arguably lower in some cases, to the increase from free-to-play to signature on a lot of other characters. The main difference is that the weapons in between for other characters are often a lot stronger. When it comes to Mualani, the weapons between her free-to-play and her signature are a lot closer to the free-to-play than to the signature. Widsith is on average worse than her free-to-play option. It's worse than the ring. However, Widsith is always a weapon that's worth talking about because it has a lot of variance in performance. When you get the right buff, it's insanely good. And when you don't, it's not. Like, the average DPS on Widsith is a decent amount worse, even at high refine, than the ring. But R5 Widsith with the right buff is more damage than her signature. So if you're trying to speedrun and you don't have her signature, Widsith is probably the way. Fine speedrun option. Sacrificial Jade is going to be her best 4-star option. Obviously, it's not free-to-play available. However, there's a few things to mention, right? First, you are going to overcap crit, right? You are starting at 101% crit rate, which makes crit rate a completely worthless stat in your substats. You would rather get flat HP than crit rate. You'd rather get flat defense, because at least it does something if you're using Sacrificial Jade on her. That's not entirely true, because the trigger condition to get the crit rate on the new artifact set is consuming Night Soul points. So if you use your burst before you use your skill, then crit rate substats on Sacrificial Jade aren't completely useless. They can make it so that your burst is more likely to crit. But outside of that, it's completely worthless. That being said, Sacrificial Jade's effect where is it? Sacrificial Jade's passive is much stronger than the average weapon passive. It looks a lot more like a 5-star weapon passive than a 4-star weapon passive. And Mualani is the first character that can actually properly make use of all of the parts of it, right? Neuvillette doesn't care as much about the EM because even in teams where he does vape, he only vapes a small-ish portion of her damage. Whereas Mualani actually does vape all of her damage and scale with HP. At R5, you get 64% max HP and 80 EM, which is when it comes to just what you get out of a passive. Pretty much a signature 5 stars worth of stats. In the very rare situation where your best available artifacts don't have crit rate whatsoever, and you have R5 Sacrificial Jade, it's actually pretty close to her signature. However, that's incredibly rare. The reality is that the perfect artifact for a Sacrificial Jade Mualani would have crit damage, HP percent, flat HP, and EM. And flat HP for Sacrificial Jade is a lot less of a damage increase than crit rate on a weapon where you're not already capped on crit rate. Which means that you're inherently going to take a hit to artifact quality. At high investment on Sacrificial Jade. Because you're actually starting above 100, you don't have the freedom of at least having like one crit rate roll on a few of your artifacts that were just didn't roll into crit rate, but at least it's there, so it's useful. No, you're starting over 100, so crit rate is completely, yeah, not it. My assumptions have included 5 crit rate total rolls. Depending on the artifacts you have available to you, it could be less or more. With my assumptions, Sacrificial Jade at R5 is about 5% better than her free-to-play option. If you manage to get a good artifact set built around Sacrificial Jade, it can go upwards of like 15% better. If you don't, it could even potentially be worse than the Ring of Yasha. Keep in mind though, that's at R5. Most people don't have Sacrificial Jade R5. The people that do are often people who play Nevillet and want to use that on him. So keep that in mind. All in all, it's a good 4-star option, but there are not actually that many situations where it's much better than the free-to-play craftable, and it's only at high refine that it's good. So for most of you guys, it's not really worth thinking about. Tome of Eternal Flow. Decent stat stick. It's slightly better than the Ring of Yaksha, just because it's a bigger stat stick. But, well, she doesn't do any charge attack damage, nor does she have a good way to reliably proc the passive of the Tome of Eternal Flow. So you're probably not getting the energy back, and you're not benefiting from, even if you do manage to like get hit or something, the damage, charge attack damage bonus doesn't do anything. I just realized I didn't actually look at Surf's Up, so editing magic, Pog, okay. Surf's Up gives you 88.2% crit damage, So it's low base attack, high substat, which is what you want. It gives you 20% HP, and this is a lot of text that effectively means you get 48% normal attack damage. If you don't trigger vapes, and you put her in a monohydro team or something like that, this 48% normal attack damage can be lower, right? Because it starts at 48%. When you use a normal attack, it goes down by 12%. When you trigger a vape, it goes back up by 12%. So if you're triggering vape on all your normal attacks, it stays at 48. Otherwise, it goes down. Anyways. 1,000 Floating Dreams is the only other option that I think is, like, actually worth considering putting on her over her craftable. It gives you EM, which is actually a useful stat on her for her damage, and it gives you 30% damage from having 3 characters that are not Hydro, or 20% and 32 EM if you play a double Hydro team, which is just a good stat stick. It is, in situations where you don't get a lot of external EM buffs, a decent amount better than the free-to-play craftable. But if you're playing with, like, Instructor on your team and, like, Nahida's buff or something like that, it is going to be about as good, if not slightly worse, than the Ring of Yaksha. So, good 5-star that stick. And finally, just want to quickly mention Fab and Proto Amber. I don't think you should play either of these over the Ring of Yaksha. The reason for Proto Amber not being too good is that in most teams, you either generate such little such little energy for her that Prototype Amber's ER refund isn't enough to bring you to reasonable ER requirements, and you would still only use your burst every other rotation, which would mean that it's completely wasted. Or have ER requirements so low that it doesn't do much to begin with. That being said, a lot of people already have a leveled up Prototype Amber, so I still think it's worth mentioning as, like, a transition option while you're building the Ring of Yaksha, because no one has it yet. It's going to be a new weapon. Fine day one option is what I'm going to call it. There could be teams where the ER requirements line up for Prototype Amber to be good. If they do, then Prototype Amber is going to be a reasonable option that's about as good as the Ring of Yaksha. And obviously you get some healing out of it, which can be nice if you don't have healers on your team. But yeah. And then finally, Fav. Fav is the one weapon that actually gives you so much energy that it reliably gets you burst every rotation, even on teams with shit ER requirements. Or with shit ER generation. Because of that, it's not actually that bad of a stat stick. Being able to use your burst every rotation instead of every other rotation does actually give you a decent amount of damage. But the damage that you're doing on each of your hits is obviously going to be lower because a lot of your power budget is into ER. Fav does help the rest of your team have smoother rotations, which is nice. Overall, Fav is not a weapon I would recommend over the Ring of Yaksha, but much like Prototype Amber, if you don't have a Ring of Yaksha yet, I think it's a completely reasonable day one option. So, ordering them from best to worst, we're going to have Surfs up first, then 1,000 Floating Dreams, then Tome of Eternal Flow, then Ring of Yaksha. No. Then Sacrificial Jade, then Ring of Yaksha, then Widsith, then Proto Amber, then 5. If you don't have any of your weapons built up and you don't have a 5 or a Proto Amber built and you still want a good day 1 option, you can also consider a lot of the other 5-star stat sticks. Stuff like Baiju's weapon is fine. Stuff like, Kagura's is okay. Lost Prayers. But the reason I didn't mention them is because they're pretty much always worse than the Ring of Yaksha. So, in terms of like build objective, it shouldn't be what's on your mind. Next, artifact sets. Obsidian Codex, which is a new Notland artifact. While the equipping character is in the Night Soul's Blessing and is on the field, their damage dealt is increased by 15%. And after the equipping character consumes 1 Night Soul point while on the field, crit rate increased by 40% for 6 seconds. So effectively, it's a conditional 15% damage and 40% crit rate. It is her best in slot. There's no doubt about it. If you're playing her with Farina, you can also play Maréchaussée. If you don't have Obsidian Codex, but Obsidian Codex is still better than Maréchaussée, even in Farina teams. And then, because there's not that many teams where you're going to want to play Mualani with Farina, and because you can't pre-farm Obsidian Codex, what sort of artifacts do you want to use on day 1? The reality is, there's nothing great. You can potentially use the Burning set, Unfinished Reverie, fine day 1, if you're playing her in a Burning team. You can use Gilded, I guess. Or you could use Heart of Death. Or you could use a 2-piece option. Hope day 1. The reality, though, is that her signature set, the Obsidian Codex, is just really good. We're definitely seeing proper artifact power creep. So going for these options is going to be a noticeable dip in her overall output. Okay, next, artifact stats. You're generally going to want to go HP, damage, crit. The crit you're going to want most of the time is going to be crit damage. If you go crit rate on a non-crit rate weapon, you're starting at, what, 90... 97% crit rate, something like that. So you're gonna have the same issues as you do on Sacrificial Jade. So you almost always are gonna want to crit damage. Circlet, not a crit rate. In teams where you don't get a lot of EM external buffs and you're not using a weapon that gives you EM Sands is also viable. You can also run HP main stat over damage or crit, but it's generally not better. Ideally, long term, this is what you want to aim for sure. When it comes to substats, you're looking for, obviously, crit. You're looking for HP. You're looking for EM. Flat HP is not all that great, obviously. But yeah. And finally, let's talk about our teams. So, I have a decent amount to say about her teams. Let's get right into it. Mualani has an issue, which is the way that her kit is designed gives her a relatively long uptime, with damage that comes out at the end of your animations rather than at the start, which makes it so that buff duration can become a pretty big problem. The fact that you have to get your 3 stacks before you get your first hit, and then another 3 stacks before your second, the fact that your stack generation happens before your damage rather than after your damage, means that you have a guaranteed forced wait period where you have to be on her and your buffs are ticking down, but you're not actually doing any damage. And that is going to suck when it comes to buffs that have shorter duration, like VV, and just the buffs that you generally get from the animal units. Her teams that have the highest personal damage are still going to be those VV teams. But her lack of synergy with short buffs, and as we're going to talk about, the lack of great options when it comes to setups that get you maximized buff duration during her uptime, make it so that even though, you know, at a glance you'd think that the VV teams are the best, a lot of alternatives that are buffs that are weaker but longer duration are going to end up being competitive. So what's an example of that? Well, I think the best example of it is Nahida. Nahida is actually going to be a pretty good support for Mualani. Because the 250 EM she can provide with her burst, as well as the ability to proc burning, get a little bit of extra damage out of that, and also just Wait, actually, I want to double check something. I don't actually know. If you vape on an enemy that has Nahida's skill on it inside of Daya skill, does Daya hit first or second? Like, what's hitting first? Is it Daya or Nahida? Because if Daya hits first, that means your burning uptime is gonna be, or your burning ownership is gonna be pretty much all on Nahida, which is gonna significantly increase the damage. I guess it doesn't matter that much because you can still build Instructor on Daya, like fully M Instructor. It's not that bad. Oh, whatever. Okay, so when Nahida procs it, it's 901. It is getting proc by Nahida. Yeah, it is. Because it's 1,000 and something when Daya procs it. Okay, so that's good. Because you want to build Nahida full EM anyways, because you want to be able to get the max EM buff. How much does your burning damage do? I mean, right now it doesn't do too much because she's not on the right build, but... Anyways. But yeah, so Nahida... Nahida's going to be a pretty good teammate because burning is a reaction that doesn't hurt Mualani. While burning doesn't actually protect the pyro aura from vapes, it doesn't consume the pyro aura, and it sometimes even extends it. Although that's not really gonna... The extension isn't really gonna matter, but... Effectively, it's a reaction that isn't going to hurt you. And Nahida herself gives a honestly very sizable EM buff. 250 EM is a pretty big buff for a character that triggers a reaction on every single one of their hits. Other than that, even though Mualani has a relatively good resistance to interruption during her surf, it's not resistance immunity like you'd get on Raiden Burst, for example, so shields are still useful. And Zhongli giving a non-conditional... Well, I guess it is conditional on you not losing your shield, but Zhongli giving a 20-second duration buff that doesn't need a specific setup also makes him a reasonable option, even if you don't need the shield. Just because, again, there's not that many great options when it comes to actually increasing damage. Right? In the same way that Zhongli's a good option for Nevidet, not because Zhongli's amazing for Nevidet, but because there aren't that many great options. He's also going to be a good option for Mualani. Outside of that, you don't really have too many characters that give buffs. You have Farina that can give buffs, but obviously Farina also fucks with your reactions. You could do some weird Uzi swap Farina stuff, but I think most of the time if you're playing Farina, you just are going to be playing her with a very fast source of pyro like Xiangling, and taking the L when you miss a vape because the timing lines up poorly. As a general rule, though, her team options are going to be separated between the VV vape, the burn vape, vape burn, smoke, burn vape, actually, no. I think instead of separating it in team archetypes, I'll look at team partners. I think that's the best way to go about it because, again, right, when it comes to good teams, it's pretty much all going to be vape teams with, like, you can still play her in, like, Taser or Monohydro, but it's not, like, that synergistic with her kit. So I think I'll just talk about the separate units that you can play with her in those vape teams instead of the archetypes as a whole. I think that's a better way to approach it. So, I want to talk about Xiangling, Nahida, Emily. What the fuck was that? Zhongli, Kazuha, Sucrose. Xinyan, Dea, Toma, Mona, Farina, Baiju, Candace, Elon. I think that's it. I guess we can talk very quickly about Kachina as well. How long does a buff last? 20 seconds? Okay. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And I guess we can very quickly talk about Albedo and Shiori. Okay, that's it. So, in order to vape her, you're gonna need some form of off-field pyro. But the type of off-field pyro you use, you have a little bit of flexibility for that. You can either go for a character that actually applies off-field pyro. You can go for an Animo unit applying off-field pyro. And even like when it comes to those two different options, because her application is so slow, you actually have a lot of choices when it comes to your pyro applicators. Xiangling applies enough pyro that you can actually consider using a second hydro unit. But even with a second hydro unit, you're not guaranteed to vape all of your stuff if you're using something like Farina. Because yes, you're applying a lot of pyro. But if your timing lines up poorly, you might lose, or you might get a vape from Farina right before you get a vape on Mualani, which is going to make you lose the vape. And because Mualani's individual hits are so much damage each, losing a vape on one of them is a pretty big deal, and it's not something you want. Again, her lack of like great partners means that Farina being there and doing personal damage and giving a buff kind of makes up for a few lost vapes here and there. But it's definitely not something you're too happy about. Outside of double hydro teams, Xiangling is actually not that amazing of an option for Mualani. One, because Mualani's teams very often can work in non-20-second rotations. You can do slightly shorter rotations with her uptime and cooldown. And obviously that's not going to work if you have a 20-second cooldown that's forcing you to wait. And if you're not playing a second hydro unit, having faster power application doesn't do anything. You're just going to apply pyro and not do anything. On top of that, Xiangling's personal damage, where you're not swirling pyro or getting Bennett buffs or vaping or any of that, is not actually that good. It's not completely insignificant, but it's nothing worth writing home about. And so sacrificing that small amount of personal damage for a better, or for a like defensive option, very often isn't much of a DPS loss. And then on top of that, if that defensive option has some form of synergy with Instructor or another support set that works well, it can actually even be a DPS gain for the team. So, Mualani is a character that doesn't work too well with Xiangling, but that still has some teams where Xiangling is good. Next is Nahida. And Nahida is a good example of... Alright, but anyway, sorry. Nahida works quite well with Mualani. She gives a pretty big buff. And if you are playing her with a unit like Daya as the Pyro, Nahida's going to have very good ownership of Burning, which is not that much damage, but it's not completely insignificant either, because you have to build your Nahida full EM in order to get all of the value out of her passive anyways. So also having high EM for those burning procs is quite good. You can play Emily either instead of Nahida or with Nahida. Emily is going to have higher personal damage, but obviously doesn't offer the 250 EM buff that Nahida does. Zhongli is just a fine whatever option that you can put in pretty much any team archetype. Kazuha, like I said, is going to be in the teams that have higher personal damage on Mualani, but that aren't necessarily the best teams. The VV setups are going to be rough. The main reason for that is, again, right, like your damage on Mualani is coming out with a delay, which means that unless you swap directly from Kazuha to her, you're gonna kind of struggle to get good uptime on your VV. And one of the big issues that you're gonna potentially notice is that if I just go onto her now, the enemy doesn't have pyro on him. So I'm just standing there looking at him and I'm not gonna get the vape. Right? So a rotation like this doesn't work. You'd have to like actually wait. And adding a weight into your rotation never feels good. Let me give her a sack so I don't have to wait every time. Yeah, you can do plunge cancel. Like, there are ways to work around it. I'm not saying it's impossible. But it is generally going to be a lot more annoying. But yeah, so with Daya, this is probably your best default setup. With Toma, it gets scuffed. I think I have time. This, you don't really have time for this. So you probably have to do something like something dank. Wait, is Toma initial cast to you? Fuck, it might be. You probably have to do something dank like this. Shit, yeah, that doesn't work. I forgot Toma's burst initial cast was to you. How would you want to do a setup with Toma? I guess probably something like this. You have to drop cancel. I don't have enough VR. I think I have VR set up. What's the point of using both Toma and Zhongli? Zhongli's just there because he gives 20% res shred. Anyways. But yeah, so you probably just do something like this for your setup. Gonna be cringe, because Kazuha drop cancels in general are very cringe to do. Especially with hold E, and you have to do hold E. Actually, you probably don't have to do hold E. Okay, never mind, you probably don't actually have to do hold E. It's not that bad then. Why don't you do Toma EQ and Kazuha Burst and Barbara? Because how are you getting the Hydro Swirl then? Yeah, so for Toma, you'd probably do something like this. I think I missed. Anyways, you do something like this for your base setup. With Shengling, I don't think there's a good setup that actually allows you to swap directly from Kazuha to Shengling or to Mualani. With Xinyan, there is a setup that allows you to do it, but you do still lose some VV uptime because you have to use Kazuha's Burst. Yeah, these are like the base setups I would do for these teams. You can think about, instead of Zhongli, using other characters, namely like Candace, for example, that can help you with your setups potentially. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, all in all, both Kazuha and Sucrose, they're gonna be good, but I don't think they're gonna feel too comfortable to use for a lot of situations. And I would say that you should only play them if you're willing to learn the setups properly. Can you explain to me why do you need to swirl Hydro instead of Pyro? Because if you don't swirl Hydro, you don't get VV on Hydro. So then why the fuck is Kazuha on your team? For your Hydro carry? Anyways. Xinyan's ability to self-apply Pyro when you swap characters while her shield is active, right? When you swap characters, it self-applies Pyro, which means that you can use it as a way to Pyro infuse Kazuha's skill. It also gives you a little bit of defensive utility, so you can use Xinyan in some of the VV teams. But her lack of Pyro application from off field without using her ult at C2 or in AoE with her skill can be a bit of a problem. Daya is actually a surprisingly decent option. Gives you some defensive utility and enough Pyro application because, again, the amount of Pyro that you actually need for Mualani is relatively low. Technically, it is possible that it's not enough. It's gonna... You might have to be a little bit careful. Might have to delay it a little bit, like in AoE situations, for example. Otherwise, you're going to lose your vapes because you're going to hit before Daya procs. But if you have off-field damage dealers, even if you hit before Daya procs, you can still get the Pyro app from those hits after, right? So in something like a Daya Emily Nahida team, which I think is going to be one of the more... Maybe not one of the more popular teams because it's using 3 5-star characters, one of which people think is ass, which is fair, right, with Daya, and one of which is released without too much synergy, right? With Emily, right? Not too many teams where she's that great. Yeah, Toma's burst hits before Mualani's normal attack, from what I've seen. When you do the bite, which means that if the enemy doesn't have an aura, you will vape Mualani's bite. You will vape the chomp. Mona's E is going to steal your reactions, but you can use Mona without using her E. Or find a way to use her E during her setup. If you do, it's a potential option, but Mona's burst doesn't last too long, so you would probably want to do it in a team where you don't have off-field damage that would pop it early. Because the buff duration starts when you pop the bubble. So if you apply the bubble, and then go to Mualani, and then start surfing, as far as I'm aware, this Mualani's surf doesn't deal poise damage, so you'll only pop the bubble when you do your first hit, which means it's going to last relatively long. However, if you use her E, that's not the case anymore, and her E can steal your reactions. We've already talked about Farina when we talked about Xiangling. Baizhu is a good healing option to consider in those Xiangling Farina teams. If you don't use a Dendro unit, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot, because once you lose your Hydro Aura on a team that has Mualani and Farina, or sorry, once you lose your Pyro Aura, if you apply Hydro, it's going to be really hard for Xiangling to get Pyro back on the enemy. Having a Dendro unit there to wipe Dendro Auras and protect Pyro Auras, or rather, prevent you from applying Hydro by applying a Dendro Aura, is going to help you with consistency of your application. You're still not going to vape every hit unless you like time it properly, but it's going to help with your consistency a lot. And you know, Baiju's a healer for Farina's fanfare. Candace is a unit that you should think about a lot like Zhongli in Mualani's teams. She just gives a bit of a damage bonus and that's it. There are going to be teams where Candace is actually a problem if you have her at C6, because you don't actually want to proc her C6 if it prevents you from getting Pyro back in teams that have relatively low Pyro application. So that's something to keep in mind. Yelan, same thing. Yelan gives a damage bonus when you're in her ult, so she's a fine buffing option. From what I've seen, it seems like Yelan's coordinated attacks consistently hit after Mualani, but I'm not entirely sure of that. I've only seen so much footage, unfortunately, so big asterisk on that. But Yelan can be fine, again, just as an option that's there. But again, right, if you're playing a double Hydro team that limits your options for the last 2 slots, you need to have fast Pyro. Xiangling by herself might not even be enough, depending on the situation. So it's most of the time something I would only really consider in teams that are like burn vape teams. Kachina is a character that is coming out with Mualani on her banner. Her kit doesn't really matter. You can think of her as budget albedo. But what does matter is the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City artifact set. And the important part is the 4-piece, which effectively says, if you trigger a reaction, gain 12% damage to both types of the reaction. If you trigger a reaction while in Night Soul Blessing. So if you're a Nutland character triggering a reaction, it's 40% instead of 12. Because of that, and because this is a buff that lasts for 20 seconds, she is a fine option just for the buff. Her damage is pretty awful, and her kit pretty much does nothing other than actual damage, which means that the only real reason why you would want to play her is to get this effect. But this effect is strong enough that she's still a fine option. And then Albedo or Chiori can just be put on the team because you have a free slot and you don't know what to put. Personally, the teams I'm looking forward to the most are Emilina Hidedea, Kazuha Shinyan Zhongli. I'm obviously going to do a lot of testing with all the different VV setups with Pyro. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And that pretty much does it for the teams. I want to now quickly talk about her, what I'm expecting out of her in terms of meta. I think Mualani is a fine unit. I don't think she's anywhere on the same level as Neuvillette. I know a lot of people are wondering about that. I think her V1 was definitely arguably on the same level as Neuvillette. With a bit more damage but less, utility because she doesn't self-heal or have as wide or as easy of a time consolidating her damage in AoE. Constellations, we'll talk about that later. But yeah. So her higher damage, but also higher reliance on like team setups and worse quality of life, I think did in her V1 of beta make her on the same level as Neuvillette. I think with the nerfs, that's not the case anymore. That being said, Neuvillette is the best carry in the game by a pretty significant margin. So not being on the same level as him doesn't make her bad. I think it's worth keeping in mind that even though, just like Neuvillette, she is an HP scaling Hydro Catalyst damage dealer, that doesn't actually mean they have that much overlap in teams. Just because two characters have the same scaling element and weapon type doesn't mean you play them in the same teams. And if you play them in different teams, then comparing them one-to-one doesn't really matter that much. If anything, I would argue that if you have all of the units, if you have every unit available to you, there's a lot more overlap between Arlecchino and Child than there is between Neuvillette and Mualani. Because Mualani has a lot of team options that rely on units that are not the same as the ones Neuvillette wants. Right? And that's something I want you guys to keep in mind when it comes... Because I've seen a lot of people saying, well, I already have Neuvillette, so what's the point of getting Mualani? And, like, to some extent, I get that, right? Like, it's completely... It's a fair sentiment. But I just want to convey that the sentiment can also very much apply to other non-Hydro, non-Catalyst, non-HP scaling characters. And that in terms of what I expect out of their playstyle and teams, I do expect them to be somewhat different. Going back to her power, I'd say that when it comes to units that will be available on release, I think people are going to be slightly disappointed in her. Like, people that don't follow leaks are going to be slightly disappointed in her. I expect a similar reaction as Clohind, maybe. But it's hard to predict because, unlike Clohind, she doesn't have other units that do the same thing already, right? I expect her power level to be around that, right? Around, like, a pretty strong character with a decent amount of options when it comes to teammates, but nothing meta-breaking. But yeah, so that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed your stay, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube. And now we can do cons. I don't want to do cons, they suck, but whatever. Actually, wait, I want to add one more thing. But all of that being said, I do expect her power to potentially get higher with future releases because, like I've said many times already in this pre-release, she has a lot of issues when it comes to synergy with other units. Either because of buff duration or other things. Okay, constellations. C1. Damage dealt by the first Sharky's Surging Bite after she enters Night Soul's Blessing. So her first chomp in her skill is increased by 66% of her HP. And Exploration passive. This is a pretty big deal for the vape teams that often only end up getting one chomp fully buffed. Sorry, the VV vape teams that often only end up getting one chomp fully buffed. 66% more motion value is almost double the damage. In terms of actual DPS increase overall, it's a good constellation, but it's nothing like it's not game breaking. But it does help you front load it, which is going to make it feel quite good. Or C1. C2 gains 2 stacks when she enters Night Soul, so she can get her first. She can get her first chomp earlier, and gain 1 stack whenever she obtains a buffer, so she gets more chomps overall. I haven't seen too much footage of this, so I'm not entirely sure how many chomps you can reliably get with this. You also get increased duration of the skill. I would expect it to go to 4 instead of 3 reliably, 4 in the best case scenario. I would expect this to become 4 reliably, 5 in the best case scenario. C3 increase the level of Surfshark Wavebreaker by 3, so that's her skill, right? Yeah. Just solid. This doesn't increase the C1 damage though, so it's not as good as it would be, or as it would seem. C4 regenerates 8 energy when obtaining a puffer, and her ult deals 75% increased damage. This makes her ult nuke more. Pretty good. C5 is ult damage, or ult levels, which is also pretty good. And then C6 makes it so that the C1 applies to every skill instead of only the first one, which is also going to be pretty good. Overall, she definitely has above average constellations. Especially because in a decent amount of her teams. She is the large majority of the team's damage. Her personal DPS is almost all of the team DPS, which means that increases to her damage are more impactful than if she was doing a third of the team's DPS. Overall, you know, like above average constellations, but she's strong enough at C0 not to need them. Between C1 and R1, I think they both have their pros and cons and are both, like, I wouldn't feel too bad about either. I think it's very much going to depend on what banners they're on. If the banner's good for the characters, I'd probably prefer C1. If the weapon banner is good, I'd probably prefer R1. Definitely think C1 R1 is better than C2. But, yeah. Okay. Getting back to it. All right, so that's it, chat. And that is going to be it for the day. Actually, it might not be it for the day, but that's it for the pre-release. We already said bye to YouTube. I will be right back because I didn't do the 3-hour thing. All right, I'm back. Ugh. I found new stalling. What is that? What is this? What am I supposed to do? I don't understand. Oh, is this GeoGuessr? I see. I think. This kind of seems like a pain in the ass. I don't want to do it. Sorry. Is there anything else I want to do today? In H-Calcs? No. I'm good. New Abyss on Asia? No, I'll do it tomorrow. Alright, I think I'll just end stream here. Tomorrow, we have the thing. Right, the thing. The thing. The live stream. Okay. Anyways, we can raid. I don't want to raid anyone today. Actually, no, we can raid Toronto. Everyone go say balls.